Hi everyone, it's me. So today might be a mistake. So today we are going to talk about 13 British traits that foreigners hate. Yes, that is the idea that I have decided on. Help me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alana and I'm a Canadian who spent the last 4 years living in England. I'm now back in Canada, but I'm applying to go back to the UK to live. So I just wanted to get that out there because I love you guys. I think you're wonderful. I think you're very funny. I love the UK. I want to live there. Please, will you have me? So I just wanted to get that out before we begin talking about all of the British traits that foreigners hate. I hope you enjoy. So without further ado, let's go. Now there is further ado because there always is. And if you didn't know that, you must be new here. Hi. I thought I should just say that these are all stereotypes, just in case that's not painfully obvious. I know people will say in the comments that they are. They are. These are stereotypes, okay? So sit back, relax. I hope you find this funny because in my mind I thought it would be. Number one of the British traits that foreigners hate is constantly hearing that the British way is the right way and in fact the only way. So thankfully Brits are usually a bit more reserved in person, but they are quite vocal to me both in the YouTube comments or emailing me or direct messaging me across social media, and they love to tell me that the British way is the best way of doing things. All other ways are wrong. And they really want me to know that. So one of the British traits that us foreigners hate is just that. It's that sense of superiority, whether it is deserved or not. Even some of the things that just absolutely, we're gonna have a real quick side rant. Are you ready? One of the things I remember that got people really riled up in the comments was I was talking about sinks. They're very scandalous. And I was saying how in North America, it's so rare to have a sink that like has a hot tap and a cold tap. It's very old. It's not something that is common, thank God. But if you go over to the UK, a lot of the places will still have the separate taps. They're older, obviously, it makes sense. They're horrific. One tap will scald you, one tap will freeze you. It's really hard to do anything at a nice temperature in those types of sinks. That was all I was saying, and I was saying that I don't have them here in Canada, and having a mixer tap just seems like a basic thing to have. How wrong was I? I have received over the years countless emails, direct messages, tweets, all the rest of it, comments that I'm just complaining and that there's nothing wrong with separate taps because that's the way that they were designed and the Brits aren't wrong about anything. So I just need to grow up. So it's just things where the Brits see that their way of doing things is better. And even if other countries have more modern ways of doing things, that's not right. Sorry, it's not right. The British way is the right way, and it is the only way. Another British trait that foreigners hate is the complaining. Wow, you guys, this one actually ties quite nicely in with the last one. Now, I wonder if the complaining is due to a general lack of vitamin D. I'm not sure, but the Brits definitely can complain with the best of us. So if you find yourself in a conversation with a British person and they start complaining, please try to change the subject as best you can. They'll probably find a way to complain about that particular subject, but at least if you just do your best to try to get them away from the complaining, because it can go on and it can be about literally anything. So it's definitely one of the traits that foreigners will probably notice if you move to the UK, is the complaining. Wow. Another British trait that foreigners will hate, and it's something that I really noticed, maybe it's not necessarily a trait, but the class divide in the UK. Wow, that's quite a topic. So there is definitely a sense of of a divide, of a cultural divide. You have upper class, you have middle class, you have low class, but I didn't realize that it was so like ingrained in culture in the UK. So even if somebody has a different accent, some people will hear that accent, think, oh, they're from so and so, and thus they are lower class than I am, and have like a superiority thing happening. This class divide is a topic in it of itself, but it's just, it sucks. And of course, there are divides in all countries, in Canada as well, but I guess maybe as an outsider living in the UK, it was so much more obvious to me that maybe a British person wouldn't necessarily see, or as a Canadian here in Canada, maybe I don't really see it. I don't know. It was actually embarrassing, and it is not a trait that is very endearing. Maybe making this video was a bad idea. Of course, you're not going to encounter the class divide in the UK every day, of course not, but it is there, and it is weird when it kind of pops up, you know, and somebody makes a comment about somebody else. And it's not just the upper class looking down on the lower class. There is, you know, stuff happening in the lower class that goes upwards, like, oh, that's, you know, he's just a posh idiot. I can't really swear in these videos, but you get the idea. Anyway, wow, what am I even saying? Now, the fourth British trait that foreigners hate is the stiff upper lip. Now, this again is a video by itself, but let me try to sum it down, break it down, or summarize. Words are hard sometimes. So, the stiff upper lip, in my understanding, I think is very much like a war-based attitude. You know, you have to just get through it. You have to do what you have to do. You have to put your maybe personal feelings aside. You just have to get done what needs to be done. You need to survive. You need to continue on and be strong. So it's very much, you know, that stiff upper lip. And I'm sure that it was needed in certain parts of history. Absolutely. I'm not denying that. But the fact that it is still very much alive in the UK population now can be very annoying. If anything, it's just a little bit difficult to get the Brits who believe in a stiff upper lip to open up at all. Sometimes even on my YouTube videos, I'll get comments from Brits saying like, you know, I'm being a sensitive snowflake and we don't need to talk about our feelings. It's all about the stiff upper lip. That's the way to live. Anyway, wow. Maybe that's a video by itself, right? Probably. Either way, it's a really frustrating trait that some Brits have, the idea that the stiff upper lip is the way to be all the time, 24/7. Don't talk about your feelings. Don't show any sort of vulnerability. I don't know, being around people like that is tiring. I do find that this tends to be the older generations of Brits, which makes perfect sense. I totally get it, but it would be nice if you guys could maybe ease up on that emotional philosophy. Try opening up, see what happens, right? It's a new experience, it's exciting. So I do just find it is difficult to have any sort of friendship, relationship, conversation with the stiff upper lip group in the UK. It's tough, you guys. And I think maybe it's a bit more noticeable as a Canadian because I find Canadians are very open. Not that we're lovey-dovey kind of way, not necessarily, but I find Canadians are quite open and they'll go in for a hug, you know, and they'll talk to strangers and they'll talk to you about their feelings or what they're thinking or, you know, be quite honest about that kind of stuff. So maybe it just stood out more to me because I'm used to that Canadian way of doing things, and then you go over to the UK and you encounter the stiff upper lip population and you're like, wow. How do I deal with this? Now, the fifth British trait that foreigners hate is actually quite closely tied with a stiff upper lip, and that is that a lot of British people can come across as a bit standoffish. Now, I've been told that that is predominantly a southern trait, and maybe that is the case, but for the sake of the video, I'm just gonna say British. I know that will offend some people, but I don't really care. So what I found as a Canadian, so Canadians I find are quite open, quite chatty, people will talk to you randomly. I think I spoke about it in my reverse culture shock video. So when I first came back to Canada, I had so many Canadians just start talking to me, and it felt really strange because having lived in England for so long, I wasn't used to it anymore. So it was like, why are these people talking to me? Is this normal? But living in England, I did find, and I did live in Kent, so I was in the southeast, and people say that southerners are different to northerners. Okay, I'll take that. But I did find that people were quite reserved, a little bit standoffish, not necessarily going to talk to a stranger, might not even make eye contact with you, which sometimes is fabulous, because sometimes I just do not want to talk to a stranger. I'm sorry, it's exhausting. But in a day-to-day kind of life, it can be really difficult. And I found as a foreigner living in the UK, one of the biggest difficulties was making friends. Because if you have a population that is somewhat reserved and standoffish and won't necessarily talk to a stranger and won't make eye contact with you, it's really hard to be like outside of that group and try to get in, because ain't nobody letting you in. So I definitely found one of the traits that was really difficult is the sort of standoffish, more reserved personality that a lot of Brits have. Now, of course, once you get through that reserved quality, the British people are absolutely wonderful. They're very welcoming and kind and funny, but sometimes it's very difficult to get to that point, especially if you are coming into a situation where you literally don't know anybody and don't have any friends. So trying to like infiltrate a British friend group can be very difficult. So if any foreigners are watching this, good luck. The sixth British trait that all foreigners are gonna hate is, guess what? Talking about the weather. Yep, this is one of the traits that I now have. So thank you for that. The Brits love to discuss the weather. They just absolutely love it. If you don't know what to talk about with somebody, talk about the weather, because you will probably make a new friend. They love talking about the weather. Now, at least in Kent, in the southeast of England, there was a couple different types of weather throughout a typical year. Either it's too cold, it's too wet, or it's too hot. It's gonna be one of those three. But the Brits do love to talk about the weather. Even if you watch my videos now, you'll find that I talk about the weather in most of my videos. So that is a trait that I have now, and I don't know if it will ever go away. The other annoying thing, it's endearing and it's also extremely annoying, is British people will comment on my social media or my YouTube videos. They know that I'm not in Kent right now, that I'm in Canada waiting to go back to Kent. So they know that situation. And I get so many British people who will comment and say something like, we're having the best weather in Kent right now and you're missing it, or we've had nothing but sun for the last week and you're not here, or the weather's so warm and lovely, we're having ciders outside in the sun and you're missing it and stuff. I get why, you know, we're having a conversation about the weather, you want to let me know what the Kent weather is like and stuff, but it also sucks. So I guess you win some and you lose some. So I can only imagine how many comments on this video are going to be about the weather. Actually, to be honest, probably not many. They're mostly probably going to be angry comments, but that's okay. I've been on YouTube long enough now that I can handle mean comments. It's kind of like a badge of honor, to be honest. Anyway, back to the video. The seventh British trait that foreigners will hate, and this one, it kind of warms my heart, okay? I love the Brits. I love you guys. I know that you know that. But And one of the things that drives me nuts is that white British people, you know who you are, obviously, y'all burn in the sun almost instantly. And yet none of you either recognize that that's going to happen, or there is an unwillingness to wear sunscreen. So anytime you go on holiday, maybe with your British friends, you guys go to Spain, ooh yeah, go in the sun, your white British friends will burn instantly. They will burn badly, but they will probably not even bother putting sunscreen on because it's almost like they pretend that it's not gonna happen. I know it's gonna happen, you know it's gonna happen. You're gonna burn in the sun, okay? You're gonna burn, I'm sorry. It's just the way of life. Put your sunscreen on, and then we don't have to deal with you complaining later. It is just a silly little thing, but if you spend any time in the UK with your British friends or family or what have you, yes, they almost pretend like they're not going to burn, but they are. And they're gonna probably burn quite badly. The 8th British trait that foreigners will hate is likely to be the binge drinking. Yes, kind of relates back to the sunscreen in a way that you didn't expect, but let me explain. There is definitely a culture in the UK around drinking. There's a drinking culture, it's there. I know it, you know it. I even have another video all about the drinking culture in the UK. And part of that, I believe, involves binge drinking. So it's just like drinking a lot in quite a short amount of time. And in some cases, that's seen as like a badge of honor. And even people who comment on my videos, I was talking about how when I drink, I like to eat. Because, you know, I like to chat and eat and drink. And so many people comment saying that eating is cheating. So they expect you to just drink and get absolutely wasted. And I don't care for it. So if you are coming to the UK as a foreigner, like in my instance, to live in the UK, you will probably find that there's quite a lot of drinking. And you just have to decide whether you want to be a part of that or not. Especially, of course, with younger people. Like if you're going to the UK to go to university, binge drinking is very much a thing that happens. So just get ready for that. And like I said, it kind of relates to the sunscreen thing. Because if you do go on holiday with the Brits, wow. On holiday, you guys are absolutely terrible. This one probably should have been its own point, but you don't wear sunscreen, so you're bright red. You can tell all the British people at the resort. You can tell who they are because they're all the bright red ones. And you can also usually tell who's British because they are absolutely wasted after a day of binge drinking on the beach. Anyway, I mean, we've all been there. You love them for it. But yeah, binge drinking is not really for me. And number 9, which actually relates back to binge drinking, one of the British traits that I can't stand is having to listen to the Brits talk about how expensive a pint is in London. I don't care, you guys. British people who don't live in London love to trash talk London. Right? Like, London's awful, it's so expensive. Did you know how expensive a pint is in London? It's unbelievable, blah, blah, blah. You get that a lot. So if you live in London with Londoners, you probably won't hear it. But like me, I was in Kent, so I was quite close to London, but not in it. And people love to talk down to London, how expensive it is and dirty and messy and crowded and it's awful. I'd never want to live there. Do you know how expensive a pint is in London? It's unbelievable. So the first few times that you hear it, it's kind of endearing, and it is true. A pint in London is very expensive. All right, we know that. You don't need to keep saying it though. So if you do live anywhere but London, just get ready that the Brits will tell you A, how crappy London is, that London is not representation of England, which is very true, or the UK, but also how expensive a pint is in London. The 10th British trait that foreigners will hate is the Brits have a real language art a real art to their language, I guess is what I want to say. They have a real art to their language in that many British people will not say what they actually want or what they are actually thinking or feeling. Similar to a stiff upper lip, this kind of ties into that in that the Brits have a real skill of talking around something. So even in the instance of you're at somebody's house, maybe you're at a party or something, and we've talked about this before, where rather than just saying, okay, I better get going, or I need to get home now, or it was nice seeing you, I better be off, so many Brits will do the classic leg slap. Ow, that was a bit too hard. They'll do the leg slap and then they'll be like, right, well, we best be off. But it is like that physical like knee slap thing and right, and that is a cue to all the other people in the room that you're about to do something and you're likely now leaving, and it's just a really fascinating way of talking around something rather than just saying what you mean. So I think in particular this will be tricky for foreigners where English is not your first language. So good luck, because it's, even as a Canadian, and English is very much my first language, it is still really difficult sometimes when talking with a British person or being part of like a social group and people have a way of talking around things that you might just not understand. So just keep it in mind. Any Brits watching, I mean, British people are most of my audience. Hi. Thank you for lasting so long in this video. If you do have any friends that are foreigners, just keep in mind that they may not fully understand how British people talk around subjects rather than saying like the actual honest thing. It's just something to keep in mind. The 11th British trait that can be annoying to foreigners is the Brits who maybe don't like confrontation, which is like a quite large portion of you guys, will complain throughout a meal. So this goes back into my point that Brits love to complain. They'll complain throughout a meal, but they won't tell the waiter that something's wrong. So they might complain like, oh, this is like cold, or it's overdone, or it's underdone, or blood, just it's gross. And then the waiter comes and they're like, is everything okay? And they're like, oh yeah, everything's fine. So it's like this innate sense of you don't want to cause a fuss, but also you like to complain. But you don't want to cause a fuss. So you just complain to your friends or your family, but you don't actually tell the waiter and fix the problem. Which I guess in and of itself kind of ties back to the last thing about not saying what you really mean. Most of these are tied together, and I didn't actually plan on that. So next time you're out at a meal and somebody's complaining about their meal, just know that they probably won't do anything about it. So just listen to them complain and have a lovely time out. Now, the 12th British habit that foreigners hate is the fact that the Brits will carry on with the barbecue even if it's gonna rain. And typically if you have planned a barbecue or you are going to someone's barbecue, the likelihood that it will rain is almost 100%. But the Brits persevere. They have that stiff upper lip and they say, no, we are gonna have this barbecue whether it's pouring or not. So while it is annoying and it's silly, it is endearing. You know, my heart goes out to you, everyone who's had a barbecue that's been rained on, which is all of us. We've all been to one. My heart goes out to you, but it is annoying. So maybe if you could reschedule it or cancel it, you know, nobody really wants to sit out in the rain to have a hamburger. And finally, the 13th British trait that foreigners will hate is that the Brits love to argue. Again, this kind of goes in with complaining. Love to argue, and they can argue about anything, which is actually quite a skill. So I want to say a big thank you for people who support me on Patreon or Twitch. I have a chat room, and we actually talked about this video in the chat room and sort of brainstormed traits, because pretty much everybody in there is British. So it was very helpful. Thank you guys so much for your ideas and your help with this video. But there was one point, and I don't know how it happened, but somebody mentioned red sauce. And I thought, what in God's green earth is red sauce? Do you mean ketchup? And then in the chat room, there's this whole big argument over whether you call it red sauce or whether you call it ketchup. And then some people were like, I don't even like that. I like brown sauce. And the people are like, oh, brown sauce is awful. I don't even like brown sauce. I like barbecue sauce. And people are like, oh, barbecue sauce is gross. I like red sauce. And so it's so funny to see what little things can spark an argument. It's absolutely fascinating. But the Brits do love to argue and they love to complain. And so that's just something that you're gonna have to get used to if you move to the UK. It's a part of life. So you might as well find some way to enjoy it. But those are 13 British traits that foreigners hate. I hope you guys like this video. It's supposed to be lighthearted, so if you are genuinely upset, please get off of the internet. Go outside. Get some sun on your face, have a glass of water, maybe meditate. Do any of the Brits out there agree with my 13 annoying British habits? Am I right? Because I think that I'm right. You probably know that I'm right. But again, thank you so much to the people who support me on Patreon. I post new videos every week, and on Twitch I live stream every week, and then those people are in a chat room together. And thank you guys so much for supporting me. Thank you so much for supporting me here on YouTube, and I hope you liked this video. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, bye!